All right, welcome to this episode of Talk Commerce live from Ecom Forum in Minneapolis. Today I have Sharon Gee from Commerce. Sharon, go ahead, tell us what you do day to day. Tell us a passion you have in Colorado.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks for having me. So I've been in commerce now for 6 years, and in my current role, I'm the senior vice president of the product organization focused on our AI offerings across the product portfolio that includes BigCommerce, the e-commerce platform, Feedonomics, the enterprise data feed management solution, and then MakeSwift, which is the market-leading Redux.js front-end, component visual editor. And in the role there, it's really about how do we bring the data together that can help merchants become more discoverable and make it easier for their shoppers to find them wherever they are looking for products, whether that's on ads or social or marketplaces or agentic channels, and then make it as easy as possible for them to, consider those products and make a decision to purchase, whether that's on a third-party channel or an owned .com experience that might be powered by BigCommerce platform, with a visualization layer that might be powered by MakeSwift. So in that role, it's been fun. I helped lead the acquisition strategy for Feedonomics 4 years ago. I was the GM of that business, and we've integrated that business successfully into the larger kind of portfolio. I think, Agentic's one of the most exciting things that's happening. For many, many years, those of us who've been in commerce for, the couple of decades that I have been, we've been kind of noodling and fixing the data that has been going to ads channels to try and eke out additional conversion or additional return on advertising spend. But the machine and the board game rules have been about the same. It's been, acquire customers on Google or Meta and then try and push them to your .com. And hopefully you can track their behavior, understand enough about them, capture their interest, remarket to them, and increase their conversion rate and their average, order value and their lifetime value, where with a conversion rate of somewhere between 2 and 5% if you're in the D2C space. Somebody came along and bopped the board game, and now we get to reset all the pieces because now all of the eyeballs are going to answer engines to answer our most basic of questions. Those queries are no longer sort and filter criteria based on price or size. They're now long form queries about, I'm going on a vacation in Italy and I want to wear a dress to my friend's wedding, and it needs to be made of this and it needs to be made of this, and it needs to be this color, and it needs to be this size, and it needs to be delivered to me by tomorrow. What can you recommend for me? And all of that data that our merchants have access to across their marketing channels, internal systems, their content teams. All of a sudden, they have to bring it all together and really get their house in order because data is the new storefront. If the customer's the channel, wherever they are, our job is to surface the data that allows them to make a good decision. And increasingly, these answer engines need really deep context to be able to answer long-form query. So that's really where we spend a lot of our time, is figuring out how do we surface, how do we make sure that our merchants' products are discoverable anywhere their shoppers are and make it as easy as possible to shop? Consumer wants to, whether that's clicking through to a gorgeous, customized, personalized product detail page where I can visualize a couch in my living room, or whether it's like, let me buy it with a thumbprint because it's mascara that I know that I want. We need to offer shoppers that flexibility because we are all shoppers using, ChatGPT and Gemini apps in order to be able to make our decisions. And so we need to move with urgency and have our merchants there on the channels where their customers are the most relevant. So, and that's what we do at Commerce nowadays. And I think what I'm excited about, you asked a question about what do I do in Colorado. I own a flower farm and a coffee shop. And that's been a really fun change of pace since the days I was agency side in New York City.
Wow, flower farm and a coffee shop.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay. So I want to unpack a little bit of what you said. We talked a little bit before about the PDP page, but it sounds like it's really about the whole site, not just about the page, and how people are finding the products they're looking for. But as a merchant, then you almost need a map to help the LLM find the parts of the information you need, because it is going to come. It's going to find something, and then it's going to lead down a path just like a crawler would. But to maybe talk a little bit about the differences in the way SEO found people and word stuffing, which is like way back when, to now how LLMs are finding people. And you hinted at it when you said, I want to go to Italy and I want to have a nice dress and blah, blah, blah.
Well, I think what's really interesting is, so these new channels are consumers are starting to adopt these channels faster than they've ever adopted any consumer technology ever, including cell phones. Like ChatGPT OpenAI got to 100 million users faster than any other technology we've seen. It's this asymptotic line. It's really amazing. And we all see the value, right? We've got this thing that knows everything sitting in our pockets. And so if we can ask it questions and it can give us these amazing answers, we're going to use it. The challenge is to give a good answer. An answer engine needs data, and they can get that data in a few different ways. One of those ways is they can scrape websites for it, but those websites aren't really optimized for agents. So it's full of HTML, it's noisy, it's unstructured, it's not, the way that you present information to a human visually with HTML and images and all that, but we have these brains that don't like to be overwhelmed. But the way that you present that information to a user that is now an agent or, is very different. And so we're finding this new challenge in the AEO and GEO world is how do you get good data, structured, contextual data into the veins of the answer engines, into their mind, so they remember to say your name when Sharon's looking for this product, right? And so part of this is not how do you do a real-time call to see if that product's available in stock at that price, which is what a lot of the current protocols are focused on. But rather, at Feedonomics, we focus on what data do you need that you have that you could surface to these channels to provide the most relevant context. So an example would be, we talk about levels of data. So level 1 data is the data you need to power an ad on Google, right? Title, description, image, size, color, weight, those kinds of things. That's structured data. The next level of data is what you send to a marketplace where they're the merchant of record, right? To list on Amazon requires significantly more data than to advertise a product on Google. That's level 2 data. Level 3 data, if you're a manufacturer, is all that data that's sitting inside your PIM, right? So product specifications, what's it made of? Where did it come from? All of those products. If you're a consumer electronics company, you got product specs for days around memory and all of these, screen size. And if you're in apparel, it's bill size and fit and style guides and all of that, trend information. And then you move into unstructured data, which is anything that lives in a PDF on a website where you go to a PDP and you download a PDF to learn more. All that unstructured data can now get ripped, contextualized as data and sent to these LLMs so that they can answer questions more effectively. But that's not the kind of data you usually show on a product detail page. So all of a sudden we have a bifurcated experience that we need to provision because agents are customers and shoppers too now. And our job is to give the data to the shopper that they need to make a decision. But sometimes those shoppers aren't humans anymore. Now they're agents. And we need to batch up that data in nice ways for them to consume. So, whether you see the Cloudflares of the world talking about how to do that, LLMs.txt or robots.txt files where, hey, we detect that this is an agent that's coming to this website. Serve them this kind of website instead of this one that's built for humans. We're seeing that kind of bifurcation happen because what they're trying to do is offer the data that is the most relevant to answer the question so that they can be discoverable. Because the problem is, oh my gosh, I've spent the last 10 to 20 years optimizing my data for an SEO world for Google where I stuff search terms into my site so that I get traffic to my site. That's not what's happening anymore. Now it's how do you send the right context to the LLM where the decision and the discovery might not ever even make it to your site because it's all happening in that answer engine. And so now it's much more not only how do you provide the content, but the context that is required for someone to know what is the best pair of shoes for a man with size 10 feet in blue when he has wide feet and plantar fasciitis. That kind of information is not how merchants are usually thinking about what they should put on their PDP, right? How do you identify which products are not good for certain things? We know that the shoe is not for running. We actually know it's for walking or for lifestyle or for travel. That's not something you want to put on a PDP, right? You want to say what it's for. You don't want to say what it's not for, but that becomes just as important. So when we think about what kind of data do you have on those levels, 1, 2, 3, levels 4 and 5 are unstructured data. So user reviews, that is a amazing data set of real humans saying words about your products. It's a treasure trove of search terms that should be integrated into your product detail page descriptions. So the opportunity that we have is really deeply understand who our consumers are. That's always been the problem. Who loves our product? Where are they shopping? What questions are they asking? And what data, content, expertise do we have as the merchant or the retailer to offer that content to them in a way that is relevant to help them answer the question? And so, it used to be a very ads-focused game. And now a lot of these channel entrants are not even monetizing with advertising yet, And so there's this huge opportunity for the people who get their data ducks in order faster to get outsized channel opportunities with visibility. Because if you show up with relevance in a place where all the eyeballs are compared to your competition, you stand to benefit. So I think one of the biggest opportunities we have seen in this kind of how do you get involved in the agentic era, it's invest in the data. get it to the channels where your shoppers are, which increasingly are agentic channels, and then use that data as a pipeline on your own experiences to offer an even richer experience, like a brand agent that can answer questions in a semantic conversational way.
When you're talking about putting all this new data onto a PDP page, are we talking about a whole bunch of data below the fold? Are you talking about adding? I think the reviews is a no-brainer, right? But if I have FAQs, if I have all this extra things that I want to add, and I want to add it in also a human coherent way, are you talking about a completely different experience that a human would never even look at the site?
Exactly. So there's like when you sense that this agent is coming to your site and it is not a human, do you render them a different version of your website that's actually full of data and not full of pictures? It's full of links to pictures that they might want to reference, but it's not even presented in the same way. So we have to, the three truths: the customer is the channel, data is the new storefront, and agents are customers too. We have to think about, how do we build technology? How do we build the protocols that allow this rails to pass this data back and forth in a new world where the people accessing the site don't have eyes?
Yeah, I mean, I can say that last year I kept saying to people that like this whole idea of agentic commerce, or an agent goes and gets deployed and buys something. It was like, I don't even want to think about that, where, hey, people are going to buy things for people, and the people are the ones that are going to shop. And then all of a sudden we have these ideas of this agent coming into your site who's going to buy something for you.
Yeah.
And no, now it's not people anymore, but it sounds like we're going to go to one step further, and maybe your site doesn't need to have a people-facing portion. Is it just going to be an API then, do you think?
Well, I think it's going to be both, because the brand site is still where it's just one of the channels where people are interacting with the data, right? So, and it's the one that you as a merchant control, right? Where you control what that experience is. But the data becomes the data that you're surfacing to channels, and how they choose to visualize it. That's up to them in many cases. If it's an agentic channel, right? We've all experienced that when we look for products or are shopping for something on, whether it's a OpenAI or on a Perplexity shopping experience, or within, AI answers on Google across shopping surfaces. So if you don't control the way the data is visualized, but what you do control is the data, you got to invest in making sure the data is really good if you want to show up on those third-party channels that you don't control. It doesn't mean that you don't invest in the channels you do control. In fact, quite the opposite. It means you invest deeply. And if you're investing in data that you send to those third-party channels, the way that advertisers have forever, because it gives them the best, any marketer knows that if you send better data to Google, they're going to charge you less for your clicks, right? Because you're giving them more relevant data to answer ultimately the searcher's query. So, we're kind of watching the data nerds of the world inherit the earth. They started as the heads of organic, then they turned into the heads of paid, and now they're the heads of agentic. It's like when the creative director used to run the website, and then they got replaced by the person who could read the analytics on the website. We're seeing that same kind of thing happen here, where those who understand how optimizing data for AI, whether that AI is third party like OpenAI or Perplexity or Gemini, or whether it's first party owned by a brand with a brand agent. So, we hear this use case: I want to offer a shopper assistant on my .mom that's somebody, like a chatbot experience. That's kind of what I would call level one, baby version of what's going to happen. But think in the future, when you have a B2B sales assistant who is completely trained on all the same PDFs that the salespeople are. Imagine how much more time a human sales rep gets back if 3/4 of the sales cycle was able to get through in the middle of the night while they were asleep, and they can do all the high human in the loop, high touch important kind of capabilities that are necessary. It's going to revolutionize that. I think the B2B with agentic and brand agents is going to be one of the biggest opportunities for B2B to leapfrog consumer experience compared to B2C experiences right now, because they're the ones with the data. They're the manufacturers. They're the one with the logins. They're the one with the pricing power, because they've got, custom price books and customer groups. So I actually think that, when we think about how do we build experiences for shoppers, be they B2C or B2B, whether it's an agent or a human, these are the questions we have to ask ourselves when we think about, okay, and how does that data need to flow in order to deliver the best experience? The experience for an agent needs to look like data. The experience for a human ideally looks conversational and expert and trained on the same data that the agent has. It's going to be agent assisted. So that's how we think about that problem at Commerce.
I'm a big Claude code user.
Yeah.
And I realized, I mean, interacting with Claude every day now, I've realized how stupid Claude is in real life and how illogical it can be. How long do you think it's going to take for us to get, and if this is happening at the coding level, it's going to happen at the consumer level, at that it's going to make a lot of recurring mistakes, and it's going to make a lot of assumptions that aren't correct. And one thing that drives me absolutely crazy is it gives you 3 questions and then it just goes and does one of them on its own. So I see at some point we're going to have this agentic come up. We're going to have a searching, and you're going to say, give me the shoe that I can wear in Italy for going on a hike in Tuscany. And it's going to say, here's your 3 choices. Oh, by the way, I just ordered you choice number 3. Like, we're going to have some guardrails that are going to have to happen.
Those protocols is really where the commerce platforms and the channel partners and the payments partners are really getting together. You've seen more open protocols released in the past 6 months than like the previous 10 years combined. And it's because we know that. None of us want an internet that isn't safe, that doesn't keep us, that we can't trust. Trust is so important when it comes to like, I want to buy a thing. So I want to be able to authorize my agent to shop on my behalf, but I want to be able to say yes, right? And so that human in the loop piece, these are deep, like the protocols that are being whether it's Stripe ACP, which we're, involved with, or PayPal, or whether it's Google, and the AP2 and some of their agentic protocols, all of these things are being established because we need to make sure that the guardrails can trust all 4 parties who are now in the mix. There's a shopper agent, there's a merchant, and there's a merchant agent. Yeah. All 4 of those have to be like in cahoots and agree and trust each other. And that gets complicated. And so the technology companies are like, yes, let's lean in and like, figure this out. It's a really fun problem. And all the attorneys are like, oh my God, data security, right? In a good way. But like the new rules of the internet are being written in the agentic space. And I think it's a really fun space to be in right now because the opportunities are so huge. Like imagine what you can do when you can rewrite your entire catalog anytime you click a button with generative AI based on the search terms that came from the channels on which the searching was happening. Like, if you can rewrite your entire product catalog with a click of a button to be all focused on Halloween, like what's limiting you from being able to do that now? It used to be, I don't have enough copywriters. I don't have enough humans to be able to do those creative things that would deliver an amazing experience to my shoppers. That's not the case anymore. Those limitations are removed. And so a lot of people are talking about AI as a way to reduce, get more profit for less cost. That's totally, a fair assessment of like, let's become operationally efficient. But it's also like one of the biggest enablers where it's about your growth for the amount of humans that you have working. It's about how do you give the humans that are in seat, jet fuel in order to unlock capabilities and power and scale that has never been able to be realized because they're all in the scut work of the operational things that robots can do better than humans. So I'm actually extremely optimistic around what this can mean for better experiences. I would love it if our generation is the last one to use a mouse and a keyboard.
Yeah,
like,
I agree with that.
Untether me from that phone.
I agree with that as well. And I think one of the biggest things that we're going to see from AI for users, for merchants, is to find things that they're not doing instead of what things they should be doing.
Exactly.
Like they shouldn't be worrying about generating content. They should be worrying about the content they're not generating and asking it to find patterns within your data to find that content that you need to be doing.
A lot of our customers are leveraging tools that allow them to define simulated personas and understand what queries those simulated personas based on their actual users might be asking on these channels.
Yeah.
And then based on that content, well, what kind of content should you have based on the questions that someone like Sharon, who's in Colorado, who's going on that vacation to Italy, would be asking about the vacation she's going to go on? And do you have the content to show up the right way so that she says and references your products versus your competitors' products? That's where I think a lot of the marketers and the integrated, let's call them athlete generalists who understand what their shoppers actually want and what their unique value proposition in the market actually is, I think they're going to win because AI democratized the tooling. All the platforms are working really quickly to try and make sure that we continue to have an open, trusted, transactional experience because we all want to make sure that that data is presented in a good way, but is also like secure. But I think when it comes to like, what an amazing opportunity to be a brand marketer right now. What an awesome chance to be able to take advantage of an army of agents that can help support you and your goals achieving. You no longer have to be in an engineer in order to be able to get something shipped. It's like if you can think it and it can dream it and it would deliver good outcomes, you could do it. And that's an amazing time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely, Sharon. It's been a great conversation, and I know we've gone over our 10 minutes, so I appreciate you taking the time here. We should continue this again in the future. This has been so great, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
The last question, what are you getting from the Ecom Forum?
Well, I think Darren and the Titans are one of the most heartfelt group of humans in commerce. And, I love coming to the show. He always curates a really great group of people who are thought leaders in the space who are dealing with real problems and how to implement them. And I think we're no exception. And it's been wonderful to spend the time with the group. But they gather every year. And I think that it's one of the best shows with the most personality. And ultimately, I think despite the fact that AI is everywhere, it's kind of still about the humans.
It's about the humans. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
Sharon
it.
Gabe, Commerce. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Talk Commerce is a production of Content Basis, LLC. For more creative content, go to contentbasis.io.